All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping right into some really fascinating research on human relationships. We're talking about identity, attraction, and what's really going on with modern dating.
Yeah, it's a big topic. We're going to try and connect the dots between how sexual identity forms, look at these competing theories of attraction, nature versus nurture, and then get into some really surprising data on sexual behavior in the US right now.
Okay, so where do we even begin? I guess we have to start with the basics, right? Like sexual orientation itself. The APA defines it as being about emotional and erotic attraction.
Right, and crucially, they say it exists independently of a person's gender. That's so important because it moves us away from that old sort of binary thinking.
The gay or straight dichotomy.
Exactly. The early researcher Alfred Kinsey saw this immediately. He said, look, it's not a switch, it's a continuum, a spectrum. The reality is just much messier.
So if it's not a simple choice, why does the science seem to have a tough time pinning down one single cause? What are the sources telling us?
Well, the current science is pointing very strongly towards biology. I mean, you look at heredity studies with identical twins, and the concordance rates are high. 52% for men, 48% for women.
Wow, okay.
And then there's this really fascinating mechanism called the fraternal birth order effect.
What's that?
It suggests that the probability of a male identifying as gay increases just a little bit for each older brother he has from the same mother. The thinking is that it has to do with a maternal immune response in the womb.
So we're talking about determinants that were set long before a person is even born.
In many cases, yes. But of course, you can't ignore the societal context.
Right. The U.S. is still a very heteronormative culture. Heterosexuality is just the assumed default.
And that creates real stigma for people who aren't heterosexual. Sometimes they face what's called a double minority status, facing discrimination for their orientation and from within their own ethnic or racial community.
Okay, so that lays the groundwork for identity. But here's where it gets, I think, really interesting.
Hmm.
How does that identity drive who we actually seek out?
Well, you basically have two big schools of thought here. On one hand, you've got evolutionary psychology.
The classic argument, right?
Yeah.
Men want fertility, so they look for youth, and women want stability, so they look for resources.
Exactly. And what's wild is that a lot of recent research still supports that ancient pattern,
But then there's the counterargument, the sociocultural perspective.
which argues that our preferences are constantly being shaped by our environment, especially by gender equality.
So what's a clear example of that?
Look at the preferred age gap between partners. In a country with high gender equality, like Iceland, the gap is tiny. In a country with less parity, like Turkey, that gap is much, much wider. It's a direct correlation.
And that's driving real behavioral changes, like
Yeah.
women's educational